I don't have a fear of discomfort. I can sit with that. I can welcome it. I can learn from it because there's something informative in it. And at the same time, I'm welcoming pleasure. Yeah. I'm allowing pleasure because we're in the physical.
I feel like so many of us are doing everything we can to avoid the discomfort and avoid any of those sensations that come with this portal of change. And we only place value on the pleasure. And there's a whole invitation to be in pleasure by being in the discomfort.
Welcome to SoulPod, where science meets mysticism and your inner wisdom leads the way. I'm your guide, Crystal Cassidy, and together we will bridge the seen and the unseen, science and spirituality, the practical and the profound. From quantum physics to energy centers, near-death experiences to extraterrestrial contact, join us as we delve into the mysteries of consciousness and journey together towards a more awakened, compassionate, and soul-connected world. Find your seat, drop in, and let's go on a journey together. Welcome back, light beings, coming to you live from New York, but from New York, not quite live. And we are going to dive into the nature of change in today's episode. And this is a often talked about topic, and it's so important to develop your own personal relationship with change. So we're going to talk a bit about the mechanics of change and how your physical body, all that different elements of self, how it responds, your mind, your body, your spirit, your subconscious, your superconscious, and how we can align these elements of self to move through change in a way that is exciting and uplifting. And as an initiation, we'll talk a bit about that. And maybe also the quantum components of things like the uncertainty principle and why change is really the only constant, even though our minds and our bodies really want us to believe that predicting the future is the way to go. When in reality, that can hold you back in so many ways. But there's really powerful ways to move through change, and there's really painful ways to move through change. And so what we want to do today is talk about some of the powerful ways that you can move through change. And in this day and time, and from a spiritual perspective, change is just like ramping up. Everyone can feel it, especially if you're tapped in. The acceleration of where we're at right now, you can feel it. And so having the tools to move through these times when so much is being asked of us as individuals and as a collective is going to be a superpower. So excited to be joined by our powerful trio here, Linda and Kat. Welcome to Soul Podcast again.
Thank you.
Hello.
All right. So maybe we can talk a bit about change in the human side. So that being in our human, in our biology, in our minds, in our nervous system, and how we're wired. And this is just kind of like a quick boot camp here on the nervous system, why we have these kind of different levers to use and become aware of through change. And one of them is certainly the mind. We are hardwired for predictability. And the more that we can predict, the more likely we are to be able to survive if we know that it's likely in that bush that there's going to be something that can hurt me, that this berry is something poisonous. Like there's all of these background programs that evolutionarily we've really been, has been something that we needed, right? We need that ability. And if we have 70 to 90,000 thoughts a day, most of those are repetitive. Most of them are subconscious, and most of them are unfortunately negative. We can become more aware of this and use it in a way that serves us. So, Linda, I would love to hear your perspective on moving through change and how our bodies are wired for certainty.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is my jam. I love if there's one thing that I love to talk about, it's the human mind. And especially this really ties into SoulPod's work as a whole, but the idea that our consciousness is separate from the consciousness of our brain. And I
Mm.
think that separating the self is obviously so key, in spiritual practices in general, but especially when we're talking about our brain trying to keep us from activating change and from moving through change. Because, like you mentioned, on an evolutionary scale, we are designed to restrict change. Not we, but our brains are designed to kind of restrict change and to kind of keep us playing safe because, keeping that negativity bias allows us to prioritize safety over novelty. A lot of times as we're evolving, novelty means you're more likely to be in danger. Now, of course, post-industrial revolution, post-agriculture revolution, we're not really in that space anymore where our brains have to immediately clock like, oh, if a bear comes at me, I'm in danger. Now it's more like the most classic example, I raised my hand in class once when I was 6 years old. I was shamed for it. Now I have a fear of public speaking. And this can go far, this can go into so many different elements of our day to day thoughts, like you mentioned, how there's thousands of them, but especially when it comes to doing anything that's outside of our comfort zone. That is just baseline terrifying for the brain. The amygdala goes haywire. That's our brain's alarm system, activates when something unpredictable happens. The prefrontal cortex, which kind of weighs and determines the outcomes, kind of works basically off of logic. That goes completely offline a lot of times when it comes to change. But that doesn't mean that we can't take control back. And it doesn't mean that we can't sit with that discomfort as we move through change. And I think when it comes to this topic, with eclipse season happening, with everything going on in the world right
Yeah.
now, there is just so much change happening to everyone. And that can cause us to kind of go haywire. Like, I feel like we're seeing so many people finding coping mechanisms rather than just accepting that change is an inevitable part of life. And I feel like that's
Mm.
just what happens when people aren't really in the driver's seat of their minds. So the best thing we can do is learn to recognize that our consciousness is going to be separate from from the mechanisms of the brain and from the brain's own baseline consciousness, whose ultimate goal is keep you alive, be the safety machine. Your
Mm.
heart matters just as much in these places as your brain's fear systems do. So
Mhm.
that's just kind of a brief overview of the neuroscience. But what's so cool is where the heart comes into play. And that's like so all things SoulPod is when you're following your heart through change rather than respecting the fears of the brain and being owned by them. That's what
Mhm.
comes up immediately.
Oh my gosh, so many good things to dive into
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I love what you mentioned about novelty.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful experience for us to be able to allow in our lives. But before we get into that, I think this is a really good distinction. I think a lot of times when we talk about our minds or brains, we're kind of conflating the two things, right? We're
Mhm.
conflating the animal biology of us in our human with like the beingness, which is the consciousness that we talk about in the field experience. And obviously they're like related, but I think it's really interesting and useful to think about those things as like two different sides of the coin.
Mhm.
And you're learning how to manage your biology in so
Mhm.
many ways first, because entering into the field experience and really having that transcendent ability to move through different layers of consciousness at will requires you to
Yes.
have learned how to manage your biology.
Yeah, and how to
Mhm.
recognize what's happening, I feel like also when it comes to mental health, people this is why I'm so passionate about this, is that people will fixate on it and they'll be like, "Oh, I am depressed. Like I am my anxiety. I am my whatever." But realistically, all of these are just your brain trying to keep you alive, and it has
Right.
nothing to do with who you
Yeah.
are as a person, And that's why like self-healing tools can be so valuable as well because yeah, like you said, like there's so much more beyond who you are than just your brain trying to control you, you know?
Yeah, it's extremely empowering to use this information as like a first step of awareness to notice
Yeah.
exactly what we're saying, to notice when your biology has taken over or taken center stage and be able to zoom out and kind of envelop that animal mind, that animal being with your mind, with your consciousness, with your, compassion, awareness, and ability to kind of overpower the animal mind with your awareness, with your higher consciousness, highest self, like the power that is that. you know?
Yeah, and even, like, with spiritual psychosis, like, I feel like so many people get lost or turned off from the spiritual journey because all of these things will start changing inside them and their brains will start looking for meaning, and they'll start going like, "Oh, I'm finding all of these signs and all these things," and they'll start following them all, randomly, and it's not actually contributing to their evolution or to their spiritual, like, ascension or anything. It's just their brain trying to assign meaning to something it doesn't understand. So when we can anchor ourselves into uncertainty and, like you said, Crystal, get comfortable in uncertainty,
Mhm.
we thrive on such a different level, you know?
So I don't think we've talked about spiritual psychosis before. So let's
Yeah, right?
like dive a little bit more into that in case people haven't heard about it. How would you define the experience of spiritual psychosis? I don't know if I've spent too much time thinking about
Yeah.
that.
I feel like it was really common. I feel like I would say I probably experienced it in like 2020, 2021. I feel like when everyone was in lockdown, it was really, really common. I would say it kind of is a loss of touch with reality. A great example is also the person who recently claimed that she fell in love with her therapist and was like seeing all these signs about it and all these things. If you haven't been on TikTok, it's happening over there. But I feel like it's common for people to start seeing like, they think that they're seeing angel numbers everywhere, and it means like, "Oh, I have to be with this one person who is, like,
Mm.
emotionally unavailable across the country and married." You know what I mean? Like, it'll be
Mm,
all these signs of people, like, getting on YouTube looking for evidence, and I'm fully speaking from my own experience here. Getting on YouTube looking for signs from, like, YouTube tarot readers that have never met you and don't know your situation, but it's really easy to kind of intuit meaning and seek out meaning
mm,
when that isn't necessarily the path that you're supposed to be on, and I think you'll kind of know you might be moving into, like, my brain is trying to assign meaning to something more extraordinary than me when you start to notice that you're, like, looping on it. You're kind of just going round and round on the same human experience.
mm,
I feel like it usually starts when you start to realize that there's more beyond the immediate reality. Like, you start to realize, like, "Oh, I am creating my reality because every time I do this thing, this other thing happens." Or,
mm,
"Oh my god, there are signs happening," which are totally real, I totally believe in. The ability to ask for signs, I work with tarot cards every day, like, I love all of these tools, but I think sometimes the brain's desire for a certainty creates a kind of panic feedback, like a panic loop
mm.
of not
Yes.
really wanting to accept the ultimate truth, which is, like, you are experiencing like, you are a spiritual being in a human body, and, like,
Mm,
what exists out there is far more extraordinary than your mind is capable of, like, comprehending.
mhm,
But yeah, that's kind of what I see the most when it comes to spiritual psychosis is, like, creating meaning, assigning meaning. That meaning is a lot of times based on conditioning, a lot of times based on past wounding, not really the actual truth, and
mm,
also it usually leads back to kind of, like, self-inflicted wounds in a lot of ways and kind of
mm.
chasing, like, a healing experience rather than accepting uncertainty, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think it's kind of a nuance between and we'll talk more about this maybe in another episode that that relationship between intuition and
Yeah,
anxiety,
Yeah.
totally.
and I'm a big believer in signs and angel numbers.
Same. Yeah.
It's interesting when it comes online for you because unless you've
Yes.
experienced it, you're like, "That sounds a little crazy." But, but if like you're saying, I can totally see that, like, if it's perpetuating a loop that's not
Yeah.
serving you, which is creating or something that's like self-protective in a way, and
Mhm.
that's coming more from the animal mind than it's coming from the
Yeah.
higher mind. You might be reinforcing certain beliefs that are not necessarily, and I've certainly been there too, especially
Yeah.
in my 20s.
Mhm.
You're looking for something, right?
Exactly. You know
To
it's when you're looking.
validate.
And
Yeah,
most
when
like
you're
a
looking,
Yeah.
maybe that's the key when you're just looking for anything to say that this
Mhm.
is certain, that you're doing
Yeah.
the right thing, and we've all been there. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But there's this moment when you say, "You know what? I don't need it to be any certain particular way. I can release," and we'll this is something we
Mhm.
really want to talk about in the
Mhm.
context of change is surrender. and then there's an openness and you're not grasping at anything anymore, then
Yeah.
that's when signs or synchronicities can start to serve you. But if you're
Yes.
grasping and you're holding on to it and you find yourself, gosh, having flashbacks. Yeah, we've all been there.
You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yeah.
I have this ridiculous example. This is so embarrassing, but I'm gonna say it just because I want to break people out of this. But it was like 2020, it was lockdown. I was lonely, okay? And I met this person from Vermont who I was like, oh, this is probably my soulmate. Like, we met one time and we like had a great conversation, definitely soulmate. And suddenly I'm seeing Vermont license plates. Mind you, I live in LA. That's not common. I'm seeing Vermont license plates everywhere. And for like a
Meant to
solid
be.
2 weeks, I'm like so convinced. I'm like, this person's my soulmate. Doesn't matter. Like, they're going to realize it. We're going to be together forever. I have never talked to this person again in my life. But there was a solid 2 week period where every time I saw a Vermont license plate, I was like, it's a sign. And I like closed myself off from like hanging out with people, like doing things, like, you know what I mean? Like, I was so fixated on like the universe is telling me that this is it. And then one day you wake up and you're like, wait, I'm the one in control. Like, I get to decide, and odds are this is not the thing that I actually want. Like, what I know about this person, yeah, they're cool, but it's not the whole package. Like, I know that this isn't what I'm looking for. But yeah, it's like the real. It's like I feel like also your psychic senses like come online suddenly, and that's when the spiritual psychosis can
It
happen
can be
because
very
of the
confusing.
overwhelm.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know what I'm talking
100%.
about.
Yeah,
But
it
that's
also
like a
feels
silly
like
example of it.
it feels like
Oh, thank you for sharing.
yeah, that's a good example. So
We've
many are
been there.
coming to mind for me too, but it feels like when you're in the midst of that level of uncertainty, it's like a coping mechanism to give your power away to that extent, but it's wearing the guise of like surrender or spirituality, but in reality it's like actually abandoning your sovereignty,
Yes.
because it's like someone's going to tell me the answer, like someone's going to guide me, someone else is going to be able to guide
It's like
me out of
giving
this
away a power.
uncertainty.
Yes,
Yeah.
sovereignty. That's
Versus
a
like,
great way to put it.
yeah, versus I'm in this portal of uncertainty and it's my responsibility and it's my privilege to navigate myself through this with the guidance of the universe, like creating through me, but it's not like I'm being pulled somewhere without my will. It's like this coping mechanism to
Yeah.
not have to take responsibility for what comes next.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds
Stepping
like.
in, this is really so we're talking about change as in initiations, right? So this is what we're talking about here. It's interesting that this is coming up. It's an initiation as your spiritual like senses and capabilities come online and you're like, wait, I'm processing information in different ways. How do I know what to do with it?
Mhm.
What is meaningful? What is not? And I'll share a personal story too, Linda, since you did. It's like kind of the other side of this coin, which is I went to a psychic. She was one of the most amazing people in that space that I had ever met. And she was talking to me about somebody that I was dating at the time. And I was just like, I was so like, this is my person. And I remember her tapping into that and she just started laughing. And I was like, what's going on? And she said, I'm so sorry, but like all of your guides are in laughter. Like I just know this is so bad for you. And there's a whole
So
other
good.
backstory karmically on that. But I just remember at the time being like, and I brushed it off because I was not prepared to allow that possibility. I was so certain
Mhm.
that it was going to work out in a way that I had developed in my mind. I couldn't even hold that as a possibility, but I will admit that it planted a seed,
Yeah.
right? And then in retrospect, I'm like, man, she was so right. My
Yeah.
guides were so right, you know?
Yeah.
But it's, it's a journey to learn how to navigate change. And the body is kind of that fearful animal in the corner. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't want that to be, I don't want to
Yeah,
move into this.
exactly.
I don't want to move into this next level of self, because whenever you move through change of any kind, and now we're getting more into the kind of changes and initiation part of the conversation, it requires you to leave something behind, whether it's a belief, a way of being, a quite literal place. It can be anything, but there's often that liminal space, When I quit my job in biotech, there was this liminal space for a while that was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It was very like I had created a sense of self that wasn't even that solidified. I was aware of it. So I was trying to keep it nice and flexible as much as I could, but I still had built my identity around someone who works in the sciences and biotech and who's going to be, a COO, CEO of a big company. And all of a sudden that didn't fit anymore. And I could not tell you why. It
Yeah.
just was a feeling. And so that is something that is very hard to navigate because it requires that leap of faith. You can't put words to it. You just kind of know that something's asking more of you in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that requires a lot of self-trust.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I
And
was
I
just thinking.
and
It
I
requires a huge trust and just trust in general, like self or like, yeah, the way things are
Universe.
unfolding. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
and in that example, I think with change, to your point, it's like it requires a willingness to dissolve that attachment to the identity and ground deeper
Yeah.
into like I am inherently worthy, I'm inherently valuable despite whatever this job title is, despite whether I'm coupled or not, despite whether I'm living in this certain place or not, like despite any of these external things that create the like scaffolding of our character of Kat, or the persona of who we are, like despite any of that, it requires you to ground deeper into that like inherent worthiness and the truth of your being, which is hard to do because we've been like our whole sense of self is constructed based on these titles, job titles, partnered, not, like all of these things that we describe ourselves with is how we exist in the world. But being able to again zoom out of that and ground into that deeper truth, it's the place where you can begin to navigate those big changes, job changes, relationship changes, moves, like from a place of much more centeredness and groundedness because it's truth.
Yeah. What do you all hold on to like when people are in a state of change? I feel like it's really common to kind of regress slightly and you'll know that
Mm.
you won't know, like your brain isn't going to be like, "Hey, I'm scared of change." Like, you know what I mean? It's not going to make it obvious,
Yep.
but you are going to notice in your behavior like, "Oh, that's funny. I'm acting a lot like how 21-year-old me acted. I'm acting a lot
Mhm.
like how 26-year-old me acted." Like you'll remember the specific time frame where the last time you acted this way, you were in a certain headspace. So what do you all usually anchor to when you kind of have that like we're in a regressive moment, I might be afraid of change? What's like the energetic that you anchor to in those places?
Mm.
I love this part of the conversation in that
Mhm.
question because I don't think it's talked about enough
Yeah.
in self-development and spiritual development because we like to think that we're always improving.
Yeah,
And it's
totally.
like we harp on this so much in SoulPod, which is
Mhm.
it's not linear. It's not
Yep.
like up and to the right all the time. It's a
Mhm.
spiral. And you're going to come back around to something that you thought that you had on lock and realize, oh, there's a deeper understanding that's available to me. This is why curiosity is so self-curiosity and just
Yeah.
curiosity about life as a whole is so powerful to bring into your experience when you're moving through change.
Mhm.
Because if you look at those regressions, if we want to call it that, with curiosity and not shame, then that can really shift your experience. And
Yeah.
for me, at least, I've learned to like expect it at some
Yeah,
level.
totally.
And you can never predict it, right? Because that's not how it works. But usually when I have a big breakthrough, we've talked about this a little bit before, and you're expanding and you're going out, you're becoming bigger
Mhm.
and having deeper understanding. Right on the other kind of end of that can be a regressive moment. And I view it as like the universe and life asking you, do you really have a handle on? Do you understand this fully?
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting point to enter that because you just had a really big expansion. And
Mhm.
now my view is that the regressive part of it is the embodiment part of it. It's like you
Mm,
went out into the experience, you saw more, you
Yeah.
perceived more, you understood more. Can you bring that down into the body, into the physical,
mhm.
into your day to day? And that's such an opportunity. So now I used to maybe get a little shameful about those experiences, be like, I thought I had that figured out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's 21-year-old Crystal. But I also don't think you ever go fully back to that frequency or that
Mm,
state of being. It's not the same
Yeah.
baseline.
mm,
It's like a
It's
backslide, not like an
yeah,
anchoring. Yeah.
exactly. It's you're still your foundations are different, but you're perceiving that experience from a different point of view, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
mhm.
Really.
And you really get to transform or initiate through that. What do you think, Kat?
Yeah, what comes up for me in those moments as I, kind of reflect on some big portals of change, like recently, especially, I feel like I really ground into infinite potential. And
Mm.
I feel like that's been a learned practice, like it's not how I always went about change, but it's become a muscle that I keep working every time I find myself in a portal and feeling that discomfort and feeling myself really want to latch onto and grip onto whatever the norm was before, whatever the known was, the comfort was. When I find myself there and like so contracted and so in that wanting to control, it's been a muscle to lean into infinite potential and really ask myself, like, how good can it get? Like, if
Mm.
what am I so attached to that I don't think I'm going to get in this next iteration of what's becoming, right? Like, what am I so scared of losing in this past version of me, past iteration of self, like this where I lived, whatever. What am I so scared of not being able to bring with me into this next chapter, next timeline? And what's it feel like? What's it mean for me if not only is that there potentially, but something better or something more aligned, maybe not better objectively, but something more meant for me, more aligned with where I'm going, just like there's no way that I can really know. And so grounding into presence, which is infinite potential, and trusting that whatever's on the other side of this portal is inconceivable, and trusting that it's going to be, better in a way, or like how good can it get, and really grounding into that energy.
Yeah.
What about you,
Mm.
Linda?
Ooh. I feel like it kind of changes each time, but like I really like to just have like a mantra almost that kind of just pops into my head and is like a thing of comfort. Like I don't really have I caution people not to fall into like the human mind, but I don't mind entertaining like the animal part of my brain if it like
Totally.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like if it needs comfort, I'm like I'm here, like.
Mm,
Hmm.
Um,
mhm.
so I feel like it really depends, but the reframe of curiosity, I feel like, is the thing that like changed everything the most of being like, yes, these are the fears, and also admitting that I'm also like I have a pretty high tolerance for uncertainty, but I am like a very anxious person. Like I don't really do I have like OCD, so that always flares up like crazy whenever I'm in uncertainty. And the thing with
Yeah.
OCD is it's like the biggest symptom is like can't handle uncertainty, like
Mm,
can't asking unanswerable questions, things like that. So a lot of times I'll kind of just like let my brain go towards the worst case scenario. Like I'll be like, that's okay.
mm.
Like we can think about that. Like there's
Yeah.
no, these are the times that that has happened. Like yes, in the past, worst case scenario has come true, and like this is how you handled it. You know what I mean? But otherwise, it's kind of more like let's do it for the plot. Like, let's see what happens for the plot, you know? Like, knowing that things can go
I
horribly wrong,
love
yes,
that.
like they have in the past, but come on, this is gonna be so interesting, you know? It's kind of these, like, conflicting energies of, like, one part of me really wants to stay safe and the other one's like, "Nah, but let's see, like, let's see what
Let's
happens."
go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
exactly,
light, well, like
the
life is
Aries
short,
Scorpio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think that like worst case scenario ritual or practice is
Yeah.
so powerful. I
Yeah.
also work with that a lot because I'm like, worst case scenario, and then you play it out. Like
Yeah.
worst case scenario, depends on the situation, but sometimes it's like I end up moving home or I end
Yeah.
up like, I don't know, starting over, like worst case scenario, but that's not really even that bad.
Yeah. And like, how many examples are there of people who have lived that and done
Yeah,
better? You know what I
totally.
mean?
And like I would be okay.
Yeah.
I'd be okay. And it just helps like give you some perspective of like, what am I so afraid of? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. One that like my partner and I use a lot with each other is we're like, well, it's a team building exercise. And I
Mhm.
like use that with myself too, where like that did happen to me. I did have to like get evicted from an LA apartment because of
Mhm.
money and things like that. You know what I mean? And I moved back home and it sucked. It was horrible, but it was a great team building exercise. Like I really learned
Yeah.
how to count on me because of it, you know?
I love that.
Yeah.
Which is, I think there's certain places that it works. Obviously, with things like I still struggle heavily with grief and with the idea of like losing my cat, things like that. Like
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
I know when that happens, it will make it so that I know how to handle it in the future, but I still don't want it to happen.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of things in life can be like that, where it's like, well, once I experience it once, I know what it feels like and I know I'll be okay. But that doesn't mean
Mhm.
you want to, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our cats,
I
so
know, the weak
hard.
point. I can't handle it.
Oh, we love our
My
cats.
kryptonite.
Yeah, this brings up for me is, and love death as a topic when it comes to
Totally.
like worst case scenario, because ultimately the fear of death is what drives so much of our fear of
Mhm.
change.
Yeah, that's so true.
Like that's the body. The body's that's what we're talking about. The
Yeah.
animal
Mhm.
mind. What is it protecting you from? Death.
Always.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So when we get to, I don't think we can have a conversation around change without having a conversation around mortality.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that is that's why I spend so much time kind of death is medicine. And that's why one of the journeys in SoulPod, once you get through all of them, is a lot around death as an initiation and as a
Mhm.
medicine. And there's so much that we see in our current world
Yeah.
and the people that have perceived power, they are so driven. And you can see it very clearly by fear of their mortality. And
Yeah.
then we get
Totally.
into, and I'm not opposed to like biohack your way to health and like, that's great. Is it motivated by a very visceral fear that we have not collectively or individually faced?
Yes.
Mhm.
Right.
So that can become and would become a problem because in ancient traditions and not so ancient traditions and cultures that really have education and experience around death, I mean, especially in the Western world, we just don't anymore. We're
Yeah.
so protected from it.
Mhm.
And that's why for me, when I was seriously ill and that experience of being close to death was so transformative because you can really face it and walk right up to it. And what is death? It's the void that we talk about in so many
Mhm.
spiritual traditions, which isn't nothingness. And it is in some ways. It's like nothingness and everythingness.
Mhm.
And when we talk about in spiritual practice, like becoming nothing to become everything, that's like the process of walking into the void experience
Mhm.
and relinquishing anything. Death requires us to relinquish the mind, the ego, the personality, the intellect,
Mhm.
which many do not want to release the intellect, their ego,
Yeah.
and definitely, obviously, the physical body doesn't want that either. It's designed to be our vessel. So that's why I think it can be important to spend some time. And there was one of my teachers, he spent some time in the deserts in Mexico with the indigenous tribe of people who hadn't had much contact, and he was really lucky to go through their initiations. There was a number of them, but he lived with them for I think over a year, and all of the initiations had something to do with facing that fear, which is the ultimate change. It's the ultimate not the ultimate, but from our perspective,
Yeah.
Mhm.
the transition of all transitions. And I thought that was so interesting. One of them was moving through a cave system that would take you 3 days in the complete dark. And so you could memorize the route through the cave. They would teach you that. And you worked on it for a long time. So you kind of knew where to go, but ultimately you were on your own once you got into the cave system. And he had to find his way through that in complete pitch blackness. And
Oh my God.
I think he was late on getting out, but he made it. And that is like, I mean, we don't have much like that in our culture to help us face the loss of our human senses, which is really what that initiation was about. So that's why in SoulPod, I really view each of these journeys as like an invitation to learning how to work with change and transformation in a new way so that you can do it consciously and not kind of be hit in the face by life asking you to change. Because if you don't do it consciously,
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, initiation and change is uncomfortable by design. It's not meant to be comfortable. And that's another element of spiritual practice, is learning how to be comfortable in that discomfort.
Yeah.
And it starts with the simple thing, like sitting for more than an hour.
Yeah.
That is uncomfortable. But you start to realize over the process of doing it more and more that you're way more capable and powerful than you thought you were.
Yeah.
And then you're
Even,
awakening
like,
to your power.
Yeah, even like even sitting through, I feel like a 20-minute meditation can bring up
Huge.
so much discomfort for people, especially in this day and age where our attention spans have never been shorter, and like our reluctance to face darkness has never been so high. Well, maybe not never, but it's very high. It's always been
Very
high.
high. Yeah.
But yeah, even like that discomfort, like it's awesome that SoulPod really uses like leaning into that discomfort as such a strong tool, because the more you acknowledge those like primal instincts that are coming up, the more you can learn about yourself through it and learn about your brain's workings and what it is that your deepest fears are. And once you know your deepest fears, they can't really control you.
Yeah.
What's that Carl or the Carl Jung quote that's like, what you don't, once you bring the unconscious conscious, you
It
have,
no longer controls you.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? The one that's
Yeah, absolutely.
whatever. The one that's about like
Until you bring the unconscious
conscious, it will direct your life and you will
yeah.
call it fate. That's the one.
Exactly.
Nice.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Yeah, it's such a challenge. And one of the, I think, other things that's kind of fun to talk about when it comes to change is the quantum side of it. And just to remind us of that component, and we've talked about this before, but the quantum universe, which is the field experience, we have an entire principle called the uncertainty principle, which I think is just so interesting that it's called the uncertainty principle, which is foundational to our reality. Like that might be a little pointer for us to consider. But the idea there, in the very like logical terms, is that you can't know both the position and momentum of a particle at the same time. There's always an element that you just cannot perceive or measure. And that's, I think, so interesting to remind ourselves that reality as we know it, we perceive it through the limitation of our human senses. It seems certain. And we can come back to that conversation around matter. The chair seems like the chair. The table seems predictable. The table's not going to get up from me and walk away. So there's certain things in our reality that we have attributed certainty to. But in reality, true reality, that's still all possibility. The wave is always a wave until it's interacted with in some way. And for a moment, we can perceive either the momentum or their position, and then it's back to a wave until it's interacted with again. So I find that just really cool to remind ourselves, back to Kat's point, of like the possibility of the present moment that's always available. That was really interesting.
What was that?
Yeah,
Oh my God. What? What was that?
Okay, that's another episode, but I had a whole like ghost experience. This
Oh my
lamp
God.
just went lower and then none of the other lights did.
Yeah, what was that yellow that just flashed?
The lamp.
Something.
Wow.
Yeah. So vibes.
Lots of energy over there today.
There's some energy. Okay, it's my brother. Okay.
Oh my
It's not
goodness.
spiritual.
Okay, all right.
He's adjusting the lights.
Just freaky timing.
Just remotely. Also very cool, right? So yeah, going back to the
Mhm.
uncertainty principle and reminding ourselves that the present moment is there is nothing certain about it.
Mhm.
It's the infinite moment, like Kat was saying. And that's why if you can walk into that infinite moment and relinquish, that's why all these spiritual practices are about first addressing the body, like Linda's talking about. Like we're in our bodies for a reason. This tool is extremely powerful. And if you can learn how to use it for your upliftment and your growth
Mhm.
and bringing you into more and more alignment and more experience, then this dance between the human and the being, the doing and the awareness can be so exciting. And I really think that's our birthright as a species, is to learn how to balance those two in a way that just makes life like I was thinking of like life on earth being this kind of cosmic vacation of experience, and
Mhm.
like how cool is that,
Yeah.
and what an opportunity. And we're working with really interesting instruments to
Yeah.
experience more, and if we allow the instrument to hold us back, what a shame, I think, in some
Mhm.
ways. You like use your instrument to propel you forward, but that requires you getting really comfortable with change.
Mhm.
And that's also second center work, the sitting with the discomfort, which is the mantra that I use for that. Actually just came to me recently, was that I do not have fear of discomfort, and I welcome pleasure.
Mm.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
great.
kind of addressing both sides of that
Yeah.
coin. Like, I don't have a fear of discomfort. I can sit with that. I can welcome it. I can learn from it because there's something informative in it. And at the same time, I'm welcoming pleasure. I'm
Yeah.
Mhm.
allowing pleasure because we're in the physical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important to double click on because, I mean, to Linda's initial point of coping, like I feel like so many of us are doing everything we can to avoid the discomfort and avoid um, any of those sensations that come with this portal of change. And we only place value on the pleasure. And
Yeah.
there's a whole invitation to be in pleasure by being in the discomfort. There's a whole there's an ability by completely releasing yourself into the discomfort, which is by being so present in your body and holding space for the sensation and watching it move through you and not trying to escape. There's pleasure in that because you're present. You're in the movement of being. You're in the life. You're in the experience of it. And that in and of itself is pleasurable because it's presence. So
Mhm.
there's like abandoning kind of our dualistic perspective on like either I'm uncomfortable or I'm in pleasure, and finding a inviting a reality in which you can start to feel the pleasure in the discomfort, feel the pleasure in the sensations that we don't necessarily, glorify or
Right.
deem as pleasurable. But inviting that to be something we reorient around is just presence. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
look how alive you are, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Like,
oh, it
yeah,
hurts
you're hurting.
so
Yeah, this is
good. Like
scary.
it's like
Yeah.
it's so good that it's uncomfortable. It's like I'm alive, I'm here, I'm
Mhm.
feeling, I'm in a portal of change. I'm evolving. Like I'm
Mm.
playing the game. Like that
Yeah.
feels so good to be on the field?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. It was kind of reminds me of what Linda was saying, which is like, do it for the plot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. It's
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah, what
it's
are you gonna do?
all
Keep things the
life.
same? Come on,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And this is not to say that there are not massive challenges that can come with
Of
change
course,
that
yeah.
comes into your life, and we've all been there, right? Where like something comes into your life, you're moving through change. It's not of your choosing. It's scary, it's deeply uncomfortable,
Mhm.
and if you've developed these tools, that's when you really get to see how powerful those tools of curiosity, of becoming more aware of your mind so that it's not completely running the show and getting you into loops that aren't serving you. That's when you get to test those tools. And otherwise you wouldn't necessarily get that opportunity. And so that's why that curiosity piece of it, I think, is number one. And it's also to say that it's not easy.
Right.
The whole point about moving through change and these initiations, even like what my teacher went through in the cave system, that was not easy. It was very much you're getting faced with your fears, but that's also why we're here. I think we talked to Kat, you mentioned something like this in another episode, is that's like the deal we made in being human on this planet is to experience all of it. And that's the physical, that's the mental, that's the spiritual. And how much can we develop abilities and tools and knowings that help us bring these thresholds of possibility into alignment, into our lives. And like that's alchemy. That's really alchemy. Alchemizing the uncertainty into some sort of creation, whatever that creation may be in your life. Change can serve writing a book. It can serve you having a new way of being and how you interact with the world. All possibility, and that's all acquired through the portal of change, which is to, I just want to make sure everybody understands that we're not saying that it's easy.
Even with like moving right now into a different like career path and stepping away from SoulPod, like it's different levels of, grief and then excitement and then sadness and then reckoning. And, there's
We're going to miss you,
constant.
Linda.
I know. I don't want to think about it. I'm not prepared to address that. No, I mean, it's like there is like constantly going to be these waves of hope and optimism and, oh, this is probably for a reason, but I don't know what that reason is. And I'm terrified because I don't know. And you know what I mean? Like there's constantly going to be waves that are going to ebb and flow. And it's what we're saying is not that it's not uncomfortable. It's that you are entirely capable of handling that discomfort and you are entirely capable of whatever is to come after this change. And if it feels like, it's a breakup and it feels like ultimate rejection and it feels like it means something about you, I promise you it doesn't. And there's a future version of you that's looking back at this moment and saying, you fool, like this is going to get so good,
So good.
So I love that we're pinpointing that it is incredibly uncomfortable. Your brain is designed that way. It's designed to keep you in a place of not being totally comfortable with change, but who you are, your spiritual self, is much stronger than.
Yeah, it's such initiation is stepping into your wholeness, into your power, and staying open to that. I mean, it takes a lot of courage, right, Linda? Like stepping into something new, and you don't know how it's going to go, and you don't know what to expect. And for the people out there that have a fear of taking that step, it's totally understandable, but that's also where life lives.
Yeah.
That's where that
Totally.
opportunity lives. And if you're feeling that whisper, I mentioned this quite a bit, but I think it's so cool, as Steven Spielberg talks about, is he's like, you'll hear these whispers during certain times of your life.
Yeah.
And it's calling you towards something, but you have to get really still and quiet to hear them. That's what we do in meditation, by the way. And he was saying that the difference is that he listened to those whispers. And I'm a big believer that there's whispers until there's like something louder.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I always take the whispers as more like a threat.
Yeah.
Whenever
Like,
because it's always like it's a pattern. Like it starts with whispers. If you ignore it, things will start to go wrong, and you'll start to notice that you're getting increasingly uncomfortable and that you're gripping harder and harder on sameness, and then suddenly you'll reach that tipping point. And as like the resident Aries, I know like my head has to be like bashed into walls before I get things. Like I've learned this lesson already. I know if I refuse and if I like say no and get stubborn about it, like I know it's that whisper is, like you said, going to become like much, much louder and much less in my control until finally it becomes clear what the next step is, not by choice,
Yeah. Initiation and change as an invitation.
Yeah.
And I think similar to our forgiveness episode, it's like change is one of the only things that is actually constant, like
Yeah.
we know that being here on earth, being in our bodies as spirits, like we signed up for this journey of constant change. Like we see it in the seasons, we see it outside of us in nature. Like it's the ebb or expansion and contraction, like change is inevitable. It's what
Yeah.
Hmm.
everything is made up of. So knowing that, it's like we can either resist that journey or resist becoming comfortable with that dance, or we can listen to conversations like this, we can approach change with curiosity, we can start to develop these tools so that we get better at the dance that we're inevitably going to come up to, like the hundreds and hundreds, thousands of times in our life. It's like trying to what's the word, resist change. It's not possible. Like it's only going to create immense suffering, because change is what everything is made of. So
Yeah.
it's like you can either be, kind of dismantled by that knowing, or you can be empowered by that knowing and be like, I get to get really good at this because it's only going to serve my transcendence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Double click on that because
Mhm.
make a good point. I think we falsely think that we can avoid change by not
Yeah.
embracing something. It's constant. You can't. You
No.
just can't.
Yeah.
It's
You
not
live
possible.
yeah, you live in an ever expanding universe. Why would you be the exception? You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
And even if you're in the illusion of like nothing's changing, if you do everything you can to maintain the status quo, things outside of you are always going to be changing. Like you'll always be in an environment that is contextually changing. Like you cannot avoid it. So why try instead? Like adopt the tools, instead. If you can't beat them, join them. Like join
Yeah.
us in getting good
Join
at
us.
things.
Join us in the river of change. This is
Yeah.
I love the metaphor of life as a river that's flowing from the
Mhm.
top of a mountain down into the sea, but it's always connected to the sea, which is oneness and everything. But the way that you move down that river is your choice. And there's certain times where it's flowing slowly and there's no obstacles and you have space to like really prepare yourself for what it is that you want to experience so that when it starts speeding up and the rapids come and you have a quick decision between A or B trajectory, that you're prepared and can feel
Mhm.
which direction is most aligned with who it is that you want to be in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's always take the opportunities when things are slower in your life to do this work instead of succumbing to the idea that like you found this predictable space.
Right,
Yeah.
you made it somewhere and you'll
Yeah.
never experience change again. It's like,
But I mean, also enjoy your time on the couch. I'm not saying that, but
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean. So maybe I would love to hear from y'all. What are your favorite like grounding? Maybe we can talk nervous system and then spiritual like practices and tools that help you navigate change.
Mhm.
Kat, you wanna start?
Sure. I mean, definitely meditation, obviously.
And
And
what I'm curious, so Kat, just
yeah.
on the meditation point, what about the practice helps you navigate change?
For me, it helps the dust settle. It helps
Mhm.
all of the chaos and all of the attempts that I'm making to control or fill in the blank of what's going to happen. Like, it just helps me see all of that and let it settle, like slowly, and I can see it all just fall away, and I can come back that, to my point earlier, that present moment where all of a sudden the aperture expands again and there's possibility. And I don't need to know what's going to happen because I can fall back into that feeling of trust. And the more you've been in these practices, like that muscle becomes stronger, that trust muscle of like, I know it's all going to work out because it's a knowing, it's like a gnosis in my body, because
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. I've seen the magic that's brought me to this moment. So I know it will. And so it allows for all that to settle so I can like re-entrain my body and my frequency to that knowing, to that frequency of trust and being totally and completely held and guided. And so in that there's a immediate settling, parasympathetic of, coming into parasympathetic in my nervous system. And again, from there, it's like a twofold. You have to be in your parasympathetic nervous system so that the aperture can expand, and you need that practice to get you into the parasympathetic, right? So that's a big one. And also, I feel like it's also knowing what I need in the moment. Sometimes it's movement. Sometimes it's not sitting because there's too much floating and too many loose ends and too much angst in my body. So sometimes it's not sitting, it's actually moving. It's
Yeah.
trail running or yoga or whatever it is that my body needs to move the energy and from my head, like down into my body, back into the earth. It just needs to move through my system. So I feel like those are typically the two practices that are like pillars for me. I either need to meditate and sit or I need to move and
Yeah.
let it move through me. Yeah, those are what's coming up for me now. And if anything else comes up, I'll share it. What about you, Linda?
That makes a lot of sense too, because it's it's nervous system responses, it's fight or freeze, you know what I mean? And so if you're wanting to kind of be in stillness, it's that freeze response kicking in and there's nothing wrong with it. You can support your nervous system through that, you know? And if you're needing to move your body, your nervous system either knows it's stuck right now and wants to get that energy out, or it's like the fight response kicking in, you know, or flight as well. Um, yeah, so it's interesting. It's almost like how we have like love languages. It's like we each have like our nervous system languages too,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I feel like mine used to be taking my journal and going into nature. Now that I live in New York, that's not so easily available. So I've had to kind of like learn new tools, but it's cool because at the time when journal and nature was always the answer and always the medicine, I was, like, very lonely and pushing people away and not really comfortable with, like, vulnerability. Now that I've kind of integrated, like, comfort in vulnerability, now that I'm comfortable with people in general and, like, being vulnerable, it's like people have been, like, my biggest nervous system regulation, having, like, a partnership where I can fully break down and it's okay, or, like, have moments where, like, I'll have a day where I'm, like, a little bit lashing out and things like that, and, like, having someone who's like, "Hey, I see you have, like, some nervous system responses flaring up. Do you wanna, like, co-regulate?" You know? That one has been, especially since moving to New York, has been the number one. And then one other one that came to mind that I'm a huge supporter of is, like, sleep as medicine. I tend to take naps, like, a lot when I'm in change, and I
Interesting.
do kinda think, like, I kind of think that in a way it's almost like a subconscious tool because those nap dreams, especially in states of change, tend to be really vibrant and really plot driven and have like a lot of meaning to them. So I know that change is coming and I know that nervous system regulation is needed when I find myself napping like a
Mm.
lot. Those have been the 2, like, as of recently, those are, like, the ones that I rely on for this year, but otherwise, nature all day, anywhere I can get under a big tree and just look up at the sky is, like, that's the medicine. What about you, Crystal?
I love that. Those are all so good. Yeah, I think for me, when I'm moving through a lot of change, I think going easy on my nervous system as best I can. And a lot of times change feels like a rush or an acceleration. So what can I do in multiple areas of my life to slow things down a
Yeah.
bit? And
Spaciousness.
maybe spaciousness,
Yeah.
maybe that's like saying no to some events or experiences so that I can really feel into what's going on and what life is asking of me. And I can hear those whispers. And
Mhm.
so that's like just daily life type of stuff, like reorienting my life a bit to allow for that transformation, allow for that initiation to take place and not just like blast through it. And
Yeah,
then you
totally.
miss the opportunity and it'll come back to you in another way.
Yeah, like that integration portal, it's so juicy, it's so good.
Yeah, we should,
Yeah.
yeah, Cat's
Yeah,
integration
that's a
portal.
good one,
And
exactly. Super, super
yeah,
good.
yeah, maybe Cat, do you want to mention some about the integration portal? It's so juicy.
For times within times of change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just a space to land. It's a space to kind of do exactly what I just talked about in that meditation practice, where you can let go of all of the past timelines, all of the past attachment to what you think, what you like, your ego, what you think is best for you, what you think you want, what you think you need. You can let go of all of that and let whatever is coming through, whatever the higher wisdom downloads, insights, whatever that is that's come through for you, to really settle into your body and be what guides you, be the force from which you move from. And I also, what's coming up for me is like, for all of us, I feel like it's, to anyone who's listening, it's like your specific antidote to change, or your specific medicine for change is going to be your specific medicine. And so, because I'm noticing, I'm like, sometimes in portals of change, I feel that need to control, right? I feel like I need to be doing so much and never stop doing. And so in times like that, I'm like, actually, I need to stop doing, to your point, Crystal, and actually, I need to go have fun. I need to go be in
Totally.
joy,
Exactly.
and let joy be the medicine.
Yeah.
And other
Yeah.
times in change, I feel so like frozen. I don't know what to do. I don't, those are the times where I need to take aligned action. So it's like, they're each portal's different, and each person's medicine
Totally.
is different. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what this is really a conversation about is like empowering you to be the spiritual scientist of your own portal, so that you can listen to the whispers and listen to what your medicine's going to be, to alchemize the
Oh my
the
gosh.
energies of that, right?
Yes.
I
I
love
love the
that.
spiritual
Yeah.
scientist.
Yeah.
That's such a good reminder of, ultimately, because change is a constant and it applies to each person's moment in different ways. There is not one way to move through change. There's
Mm-mm.
certain tools for sure, but trust yourself in your
Yeah.
power and having the, like Linda was saying, you are fully capable of moving
Yeah.
through this.
Yeah.
You've got this. And even if that's what you're reminding yourself of, that can be your portal to move through the change.
Yeah.
And other ways will emerge from the change itself that you will discover
Yeah.
is your tool or your way of moving through change. But I think another thing for me that I found to be really important is that when change comes, and I kind of imagine it as like the speeding up of the river, and it's maybe a little bit more choppy and there's more going on, there's more possibility, is like, I think the knee-jerk reaction can be to sometimes forgo my practices, or like there's too much going on. I need to like I can get into my head quickly about
Yeah.
something, and like wanting to solve a problem, which is the change, from the intellect, from the
Right.
mind. And that's always, I will dare to say, always going to be limited.
Yeah.
And so if I can instead go a bit deeper into whatever practice it is for you. And I think sitting in pure stillness, like not guided, sometimes can be really helpful.
Yeah.
If there's too much going on, guided is your way because it can
Yeah.
help you latch on to something. And then like soulscapes and music,
Mhm.
and just like
Yeah.
letting yourself be carried by vibration, by frequency.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a microdose day
Mhm.
for me that's like shaking things up so that I can more easily step through that threshold of
Yep.
possibility and see that lightning bolt moment of everything kind of gets lit up and you're like, oh, like this is what's possible. Like shake the brain up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I think as much as you can, and Linda, you mentioned this at the beginning, which I think we need to come back to, is coming out of the intellect,
Mhm.
finding your way into the field experience, which is connected with more information and always will be. So you're going to be able to see more possibilities and downloads, if you want to call it that. But it's the heart.
Mhm.
It's like coming into your heart space. And this heart space there's a reason the ancient Egyptians thought of it at more elevated than the brain, is it's powerful. And if you can
Yep.
start to navigate change through the heart instead of just the mind and the intellect and the logic, then navigating those rivers is going to become way more fun
Mhm.
and way more potent.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
One final like brain tip too, if you have a hard time with that, the like primal brain constantly spinning, you can distract it. Like I usually turn to like cleaning, like putting on in the SoulPod portal like the looping audio and just cleaning with like this with like very mellow lyricless music going, like an unguided meditation or even a guided meditation while you clean. Driving is a great way to distract your conscious mind so that your subconscious can come forward or distract your brain so your heart can open up. What others? Like there's so many things where if you just get your body doing a certain
Breath
task.
work.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
breath work, like just engaging the physical body so that the conscious mind can kind of just go into autopilot and your heart can kind of come forward and those little voices that are normally really quiet can come forward.
Uh-huh.
That's like equally magic as anything else as well.
I so
Yeah.
agree. Anything else for you, Kat, before we close for today?
No, I feel like we've touched on so much, but I do think the underlying message of this conversation is that you are capable of feeling the whole spectrum of the portal of change. Like you have the tools, you have the capacity to breathe through whatever the sensation is or discomfort is.
Yeah.
I love it. And just one more thing to kind of leave with everybody is that, we are being asked as a species, I think, in this time in ways that are maybe unique to where we've been as humanity so far to move through quite a lot of change. There's so much being asked of us as a collective and as individuals. And so if you can connect with an intention that speaks to you in some way around how you want to move through change in the times to come, I think that can be a really powerful thing to think about so that when those moments come, those initiations, those thresholds, you're ready, you're like, okay, game on life. Like, let's do the thing and let's find my highest possible alignment
Yeah.
and let change serve my highest good, my body, my mind, my spirit. And that's power. That's true power.
Yeah.
And as Kai was saying, that's our birthright, I think, as beings and interdimensional beings, but we can get into that later. So yeah, I think this was I think, a helpful conversation for those moving through these times. Something I'm personally definitely going to bookmark as well. And I just want to give a big thank you to Linda for traveling with us on the podcast. And
Thank
she's
you
off
guys.
to really exciting new portal, new threshold. And we are cheering you on
Thank
from
you.
the sidelines here. And of course, you're always welcome back anytime.
Yeah. I'm gonna drag both of you onto my podcast as well.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll
It's
be
not
back.
the end, but it's like,
No, it's seriously been such an honor, and I've like been able to expand my understanding of myself and humanity and spirituality as a whole. And this is just like the coolest team to be part of. So if you all have ever wanted to support a business that actually makes a difference in people's lives and treats their employees well and is just an amazing vibe to be part of, support SoulPod. It's going to only keep growing based on the amazing things that you all keep putting out into the world,
Oh,
Oh, thank you, Linda.
sweet. We love you,
Oh,
Linda.
we love
love
you. Hearts.
And thank you everyone who's listened too. It's been so much fun getting to edit these and release these and watch you guys comment and all that.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, this was really Linda created the Soul podcast.
Oh.
Like this was back in January. She was like, you know what I think we need? I think we need a podcast. And I can guarantee you, if it were not for Linda, we would not be doing this podcast.
I think word for word I said, Crystal, why don't you have a podcast?
Yeah, you did.
I was like, are you
you
scared of the camera? Can we just do this? And you were like, yeah, all right, let's do it.
And it was so easy. And talk about like listening to the whispers.
Oh,
it was
totally.
like that
Yeah.
you listened to the whisper that like this space wanted to come forward. And
Yeah,
so
no, me and this podcast have had many a late night hang for sure.
yeah, you've poured so much into it, and it's
Thank
been
you.
such an honor and a pleasure and like really fun too.
Yeah, no,
So,
it's been amazing. It's been so much fun. It's been awesome.
yeah. So
Yeah.
stay tuned. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Kat.
Yeah.
Kat, we'll be back on soon.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
also will probably hear from me in Egypt. We're about to go on
Yes.
that trip, and so we'll do some episodes from there. But stay tuned, Light Being, for next time. And thank you, as always, for journeying with us. Sending you lots and lots of love.